Friends, the holidays are a time for reflection, spending time with loved ones, and looking back on the year gone by. A time where we give thanks for the people in our lives, our health, and what we've achieved thus far.
It's also a time for rampant consumerism, capitalism run amok, and absolute greed, yes.
You're goddamn right it is. Welcome aboard Space Castle, where our continuing mission is to explore all things nerdy in the universe. I'm your Captain DT, and I am somebody who's lived through the 80s and 90s, and, like I've said before, those were the best decades to be a kid. The 80s and 90s held the golden age of children's toys and games. All year long, we'd peruse the Toys R Us catalogs, we'd be glued to toy commercials as much as the TV shows in between, and we'd chat in class about what we were going to ask Santa to bring for us for Christmas. And that mofo never let us down. With some help from Mom and Dad, I enjoyed dozens of wonderful Christmases filled with joy, family, and badass presents that I'll never forget. Here now are the top 5 Christmas presents I ever received. Now I'm going to try and testify on all these amazing presents in chronological order as best I can. And to kick things off, we're headed back to 1985. In a time before the internet, just before the Nintendo Entertainment System arrived in America, and before I was even able to ride a bike, one thing consumed my weirdly advanced toddler brain: Thundercats. Now, I've done a video mentioning Thundercats before and how it has the best 80s cartoon intro of all time. But past that amazing opening sequence was a really weird show about cat people fighting mutants and cyborg pirates and an ancient mummy, and were aided by robotic Ewoks, a space cop, Amazon women, and a couple of old hippies who took care of unicorns. Thundercats was like a fucking fever dream of loosely tied together nonsense, but I loved it. I had all the action figures and all the vehicles, including the fabled Thunder Tank, the mobile battle platform and main mode of transportation for the Thundercats team. I did not, however, have Panthro, the Mac Daddy badass of the core Thundercats team, the chief mechanic, and the only motherfucker qualified enough to drive the Thunder Tank. As such, my prized Thunder Tank went largely neglected, as no other Thundercat action figure was worthy of sitting in that driver's seat. And as such, the Panthro action figure was amongst the hardest to find. No doubt countless Thunder Tanks went without drivers, as many kids just like me waited for that fateful day when the best and raddest Thundercat would arrive to make their dreams come true. And in Christmas 1985, my parents pulled off the impossible. Panthro was under the Christmas tree. Now you gotta remember, back in 1985, there were no websites to track retail stocks in stores. There was no Facebook or eBay to try and score them on a secondhand market. No, my parents, who must have really loved me, would scour stores on the regular in their free time to make little DT's wishes come true. And I still, 37 years later, vividly remember ripping that blue and gray pimp out of his blister pack, putting him into the Thunder Tank for the first time, and going apeshit across the floor of my bedroom. Panthro is the first truly great and memorable Christmas gift I can remember receiving, and I'll never forget him. Now, let's jump ahead just a little bit to 1989, where 6-year-old DT was deep into a new obsession, and one that would carry on through the rest of his life: Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, heroes in a half shell, turtle power.
This is another situation where I had tons of the action figures, pajamas, t-shirts, toothpaste, and I would have eaten a diet strictly of pizza and disgusting Ninja Turtle pies if my parents would have allowed it. One aspect of life that had yet to be invaded by the heroes on a half shell was video games. Now, my family was a little late to the NES party, mostly because my younger sister and I were just too young to really enjoy it when it came out, but one afternoon spent at my aunt's house playing Super Mario Bros. Sealed the deal, and everybody in my family suddenly had to have one. Up until Christmas of 1989, we had 2 video games, Super Mario Bros. And Excitebike. Now, I played the hell out of both of them, but my mother absolutely owned Mario Bros., both figuratively and literally. She was obsessed and beat it about 1,000,000 times. An Excite Bike was inarguably my dad's game as he raced dirt bikes when he was growing up. Somehow, I caught wind of the existence of a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game for Nintendo, and I had to have it. My obsession with Thundercats a couple years prior was fully eclipsed by Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles at this time, and the idea of a Nintendo game featuring my favorite thing was something that I simply could not live without. Mom and Dad once again worked their magic and hooked a brother up. I tore open the wrapping paper on Christmas morning in 1989 to be greeted by that glorious Ninja Turtles artwork and that Ultra Games logo, and promptly flipped the f*** out. I could not sit still long enough to finish Christmas breakfast. I would pause the game, run to the table to take a bite at the insistence of my mom, then run back, mouth full of egg and biscuit, and continue playing. Playing one of the hardest video games ever made, a game that made very little sense to me as my understanding of the Turtles came from action figures and the cartoon, but one that I still loved dearly, and one that I played so much that even 6-year-old DT could beat the damn level on the regular, something that full-grown adults to this day still cannot achieve. And that pales in comparison once again to my mother, who is the only person I've ever seen actually beat that game. My mom was a bona fide gamer. Before that was even a term. She'd wait until my sister and I went to sleep, and then she'd stay up all night mastering the games we'd collected over the years. I once saw her beat Miss Pac-Man on Sega Genesis. I didn't even know Miss Pac-Man had an ending. And now it's time once again to skip forward, and we're heading to the early 1990s when I was in 2nd grade, still utterly obsessed with Ninja Turtles. My collection was completely out of control by this time with the figures, the vehicles, a couple more of the video games, but what it lacked was a centerpiece to tie it all together. A functional piece of art to anchor the conversation whenever I'd host my friends from school. A place for the action figures to rest after long hours of battling each other. My friends, I needed the Sewer Lair playset from Playmates.
The foot are about to ambush the turtle sewer playset, but thanks to the turtle's periscope, it's no surprise.
A sewer den from my turtles with 2 rooms, a bed, a working elevator, a fire hydrant periscope, and a street level above complete with telephone poles, a manhole cover, and a sewer pipe slide for quick escape from the clutches of Shredder. I absolutely had to have it, but my parents regretfully told me that money was tight that year and a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle sewer den playset was something they just couldn't swing. So I resigned myself to the idea that my turtles would continue having to live in plastic bins in the closet. I'd go to the store with my parents and I'd see the sewer playset stacked at the top of the toy aisle shelves, literally just out of reach.
You can't touch this. You can't touch this.
The longing was real. But there was magic in the air that Christmas. Something about it. I was 8 years old and in 2nd grade, one of the best ages to be. The lead up to that Christmas was more palpable than the ones I could remember before it. Festivities at school were somehow cranked up to 11. Charlie Brown and Rudolph seemed especially good that year, and Christmas Eve night just felt electric. My little sister, who was 6 at the time, was absolutely jacked up on excitement and refused to sleep. To my total horror, she repeatedly jumped out of her bed in our shared bedroom, opened the door more slowly and quietly than the narrator of the Telltale Heart, and would commando crawl out to the living room to see if Santa had been there yet. I pleaded with her each time to not do it. Disrupting Santa's work would almost definitely result in us getting labeled naughty and would wreck Christmas. But each time she made her way back into our room, I would grill her about what she saw and if Santa had actually been there yet. I think at one point she may have actually told me that she saw Santa himself. I'm sure I refused to believe her, but my 8-year-old heart held out hope that she'd actually seen him and that we were in for a glorious Christmas. And she was so hopped up on adrenaline and sleep deprivation that she may have actually seen Santa. Who knows? After a near sleepless night, we wandered into the living room on Christmas morning to find an absolute treasure trove of gifts under the tree. And dead center, for all to see, not even wrapped so the impact would be like a slap to the face, was... Alright, hang on, this is gonna blow your mind, so let's take a brief interlude to prepare you mentally. There it was, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Sewer Den playset. Santa had hooked me up in spectacular fashion, had made my dreams come true, and cemented my belief in him for another 20 years. And on top of that, my sister's wild excitement was rewarded, for she got exactly what she wanted that year too. Go my walkin' pup. It was truly the greatest Christmas ever. And years later, we still talk about that Christmas morning. And even though we're adults in our late 30s and early 40s now, my dad still swears to me and my sister that he and my mom had nothing to do with the sewer playset or Go-Go, my walking pup. That it definitely must have been Santa that delivered them, and he has no idea where they came from. I love you, Dad. And now it's time to zip forward to 1994. I was the age of 10, and while Ninja Turtles still lingered in the back of my mind, I was fully engrossed in the much more mature, nuanced, and Lair stories of the X-Men. I read the comics, I loved the animated series on Fox Saturday mornings, and longed for my own mutant powers to kick in, and I was sure it would happen any day. I had a full assortment of X-Men action figures, which began with the classic Wolverine with the yellow and brown costume, the removable mask, and the pop-out claws, and my collection had grown into nearly the entire X-Men team and then some. My two favorite X-Men, though, were Beast and Rogue, and wouldn't you know it, they were the two rarest and hard-to-find X-Men figures. I swear I did not do it on purpose to have my parents chase down the hardest-to-find action figures every year, but here we are. They had managed to snag a Beast action figure for my birthday that year, and I was hoping with all hope to have Rogue that Christmas and complete my collection. I would ask to go to Target every Saturday just so I could run to the toy aisle and reach up and dig through the action figure pegs, hoping to see those classic yellow boots revealing a Rogue action figure. And every so often I'd come across a pair of yellow feet and my little heart would skip a beat. But alas, it would always be Banshee, that motherfucker. My parents would spin tales of stopping by the store on their way home, asking around about Rogue action figures and there being none in the entire world. That I shouldn't get my hopes up that holiday. A week before Christmas, we got together with my best friend's family to exchange gifts and hang out. I loved it. He's still my best friend to this day, and his mom is like my second mom. We all had dinner, we played some Sega Genesis in his den, and then later in the evening, we all exchanged gifts, and all of us kids would spend the rest of the visit palling around, playing with our new toys, and having a good time while our parents probably drank beers and exchanged horror stories about shopping that year or something, or maybe they talk about all the cool R-rated movies they'd seen that I wasn't allowed to see. I don't know, whatever the grown-ups do. So we each got our gifts and we tear them open, and I'm almost positive that what I got was some cool Star Wars toy or something that I'm sure I cherished for years. But in my best friend's hands, gifted to him by my parents, was an unwrapped Rogue action figure. My 10-year-old self was stunned. They found a much sought after and allegedly non-existent Rogue action figure and they gave it to my best friend? Did they accidentally give him my Rogue action figure by mistake? Was it all a prank and was everybody in on it? My greedy and covetous prepubescent heart was filled with hurt and jealousy. It was the one thing I wanted more than anything that year, and my best friend got it instead. I'm embarrassed now of how distant and disappointed I acted the rest of the evening, but at the time, being 10 years old and X-Men being my entire life, I felt betrayed and let down. But, as parents usually do, they had schemed and done it all on purpose. They had hit up a retail store early one morning right as boxes of X-Men action figures arrived and grabbed 2 Rogues. A week later on Christmas morning, Rogue was waiting for me under the Christmas tree, along with a brief but sincere discussion with my parents about being thankful for what I have, being happy for others in what they receive, and to just not be a covetous and jealous little shithead. It's a lesson that has stuck with me the rest of my life. And the first thing I did was call my best friend up on the phone, excited to tell him that I got a Rogue action figure too, and to say how sorry I was that I'd acted like such a dick the week prior. It was another memorable Christmas where I not only got the present I desired most and would love and play with for years, but one where my parents carefully and cunningly taught me an important life lesson.
Yeah, whatever. Get back to the greedy consumerism.
Okay. I've got one more best present ever and we'll skip ahead to 1996. And I'm pretty sure that year just set off the spider sense of most of the nerds watching right now. You know where I'm going with this. I was 12 years old and video games were well on their way to eclipsing action figures as my main source of entertainment and desire. Years of playing Nintendo, Super Nintendo, and Sega Genesis had cemented me as a lifelong gamer, and I was always looking forward to the next big thing. And in 1996, there was absolutely nothing bigger than the pending release of the Nintendo 64.
You know who everybody's after. You know the games of Nintendo 64.
Get
Now, many a console has come and gone since the launch of the Nintendo 64. We've seen the mad rush for PlayStations all the way up to the nigh impossible to find PlayStation 5 during the era of COVID. We saw people waiting in line outside of Best Buy locations doing that stupid lottery system crap to try and get a Nintendo Switch. But for those of you not old enough to remember, believe me when I say that nothing compared to the hype of autumn of 1996 and the agonizing wait for the Nintendo 64. The first Mario epic in 360-degree exploration and graphics which, for the time, were mind-blowing. A jet ski racing game with the wildest and neatest physics we'd ever seen in a video game. A new Star Wars game with a brand new story that took place outside the movies. Me and everybody I know and everybody else on the planet pored over every commercial, every print advertisement, and every bit of media we could stuff into our eyeballs. This wasn't something that only I wanted either. My sister was amped as hell for the Nintendo 64. My parents couldn't wait to play it, and it immediately sold out. Everywhere. You couldn't even pre-order one because the units were in such demand. The secondhand market was offering them for upwards of $600. On a side note, fuck scalpers. Fuck them so hard. You are the absolute worst. So Christmas of 1996 was built on tempered expectations. There wasn't even a story to spin to fool us kids into thinking mom and dad couldn't afford it or anything like that. We were acutely aware that it was the most sought-after thing on the planet, and it was simply a numbers game that we probably wouldn't be getting one on Christmas. Mom and dad assured us that they would try to snag one as soon as they were available. And we were cool with it. I was 12, my sister was 10, mom and dad raised us right, and we were still looking forward to a great Christmas anyway, and we'd be thankful for whatever we received. I learned my lesson with Rogue. That Christmas morning arrived, and Grandma and Grandpa arrived shortly after we woke up. We had breakfast, and we tore into some great presents. My sister and I started amusing ourselves with our new toys when the adults pointed out another present still left in the corner behind the Christmas tree that somehow had gone unnoticed.
Hey, that's funny. What's that over there behind the desk?
Where?
Behind the desk, against the wall over there. Why don't you go check it out?
We pulled it out and we gave it a once-over, and we were instructed to thank Grandma and Grandpa before we tore into a brand new factory-sealed Nintendo 64. Grandma and Grandpa were the heroes that Christmas. I still to this very day have no idea how in the world they snagged a Nintendo 64, but there I was in our grubby little hands, ready to be busted open and usher us into a whole new era of video game adventures. Save for one small problem, there was no game. Nintendo didn't bundle Mario 64 with a console like they had done with Super Mario Bros. Or Super Mario World. We were still hella excited, but we'd have to wait until we got the gift my grandparents pulled out of nowhere and handed to us next. A copy of Super Mario 64. Now, I wasn't in the habit of crying at the age of 12. My budding masculinity and desire to be a man prevented such things. But damn if I didn't come close to welling up with tears as I hugged my grandparents and thanked them profusely. What would follow was years of obsessive video gaming through the likes of Mario 64, Shadows of the Empire, Star Fox 64, Donkey Kong 64, Ocarina of Time, and many others. It still remains one of my favorite consoles of all time, number 5 on my top 5 Christmas presents ever, and memories I will always, always cherish. Happy holidays to all of you watching, and thank you so much for watching. 2023 has been a wild year, and I think quite successful here on the Space Castle. There's big things coming in 2024, and you can help those along by liking, subscribing, and by please sharing this video with a friend. Let's get a conversation in the comments going about our favorite holiday memories and the raddest gifts that you got as a kid. And a great, big, special thank you goes out to the Galactonaut crew for their love and support this year. You folks are amazing, incredible, and I want you to know that I'll always do my best to do right by your support on patreon.com/spacecastleshow. I can't thank you enough for everything you've done for me this year, and I hope what's coming next year helps to make up for it. Whatever holidays you all at home celebrate, I hope they're just as memorable as the stories I've just shared. And if you're a parent, good on you for creating those same types of memories for your kids. I'm gonna go finish this eggnog now that it's all warm and gross and create a whole different kind of holiday memory for Goldblum when he hears me throw it back up.
I'm gonna record it and make a holiday remix.